Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you for a moment because somebody listening to me right now needs to hear this with their whole spirit. I didn't say 2026 might be your year. I said 2026 is your year if you decide it is. Not if you wish for it, not if you hope for it, but if you stand up and say, I'm done playing small. I'm done waiting for permission. I'm done being average. See, too many people enter a new year carrying old habits, old fears, old excuses. You can't expect new results while dragging old baggage. At some point, you have to stop blaming your past, your parents, your situation, or your luck. Responsibility is a powerful thing. The moment you take full responsibility for your life, that's the moment your life starts to change. Now, let me tell you something about success. It don't come to people who feel like it. It comes to people who are disciplined. Motivation will lie to you. Motivation will show up when it feels good and disappear when it gets hard. Discipline says, I'm going to do it anyway. Discipline says, I don't feel like it, but I'm committed. If you want 2026 to be different, your habits have to be different. Ladies and gentlemen, let me slow this thing down for a second because this part right here is where everything begins. Before plans, before goals, before discipline, before grind, you have to claim the year. You don't drift into a great life. You decide into it. Too many people walk into a new year like a visitor instead of an owner. They say things like, let's see what happens, or I hope this year is better. Hope is not a strategy. Wishing is not a plan. At some point, you have to stand flat-footed and say, this is my year, and I'm taking responsibility for what comes next. See, responsibility is scary to people because it removes excuses. When you claim the year, you can't blame your job anymore. You can't blame your family, your past, your city, your age, or your education. Claiming the year means you accept that where you are is connected to what you've been doing, thinking and tolerating. And that's not an insult, that's power. Because if your choices helped create your current situation, then new choices can create a new one. A lot of folks want God to change their life, but they don't want to change themselves. They want a blessing, but they don't want the burden that comes with it. Claiming the year means saying, God, I trust you, but I'm also going to do my part. Faith is not sitting on the couch waiting for a miracle to knock on the door. Faith is getting up every day and acting like what you prayed for is possible. You don't need more signs, you need more courage. Some of you have been living on pause. You keep telling yourself, I'll start when the time is right. Let me help you with something. The time is never perfect. Perfect timing is a myth people use to stay comfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. Responsibility is uncomfortable. But staying stuck is painful. And sooner or later, pain will force you to move if purpose doesn't. When you claim the year, you also stop negotiating with your potential. You stop lowering the bar so you can step over it. You stop saying, this is just how I am. No, that's how you've been. There's a difference. Claiming the year means you give yourself permission to evolve, to outgrow old habits, to outgrow old conversations, to outgrow old versions of yourself that no longer fit where you're headed. Here's another hard truth. Everybody wants a new year, but not everybody wants a new mindset. You can't think broke and expect abundance. You can't think small and expect big outcomes. You can't keep talking defeat and expect victory to show up. Your mouth is a steering wheel. It points your life in a direction. When you claim the year, you change how you speak about yourself, even when nobody's listening. And let me say this because it needs to be said, claiming the year doesn't mean everything will be easy. It doesn't mean you won't face obstacles. It means when trouble shows up, you don't quit. You don't fold. You don't start questioning your worth. You say, this is part of it. Resistance is often a sign that you're moving in the right direction. The enemy doesn't fight things that aren't going anywhere. You have survived things you thought would break you. You have made it through seasons you didn't think you'd see the end of. That alone qualifies you to believe that a better chapter is possible. Stop acting like your story is over just because one chapter was hard. Claiming the year means you stop letting yesterday vote on today. This is about ownership. Ownership of your mornings. Ownership of your effort. Ownership of your growth. Nobody is coming to save you, but that's not bad news. That's freedom, because it means the pen is in your hand. You get to decide what this year stands for. So when you say, "This is my year," don't whisper it. Don't say it like a question. Say it like a decision. Say it like you're ready to be accountable for the work, the discipline, and the patience it requires. Because the moment you truly claim the year, life starts responding differently, not because the world changed, but because you did. Ladies and gentlemen, let me be very real with you, because this is the part most people avoid. If you truly want this year to be different, you are going to have to let go of some excuses and some average thinking. Average is comfortable. Average feels safe. Average doesn't challenge you, and that's why so many people stay there their whole life. But deep down, you already know you were not created to live an average life. You feel it every time you get frustrated with yourself. That frustration is not hate. It's a signal that there's more in you. Excuses sound reasonable. They even sound intelligent. I don't have enough time. I didn't get the right opportunity. People don't support me. I'll start when things slow down. But here's the truth. Every successful person at the same 24 hours faced rejection and started before they were ready. The difference is they stopped using their circumstances as a ceiling. They made a decision that their situation would not define their destination. Average thinking says, "I'll do just enough to get by." It says, "As long as I'm not failing, I'm okay." But let me tell you something, just getting by is a slow form of quitting. You weren't designed to survive. You were designed to grow. The problem is growth demands effort, and effort exposes weaknesses. That's why people settle. It's easier to complain than to commit. You have to challenge the stories you tell yourself. If you keep saying, "This is all I can do," your life will shrink to match that sentence. Words are powerful. They become beliefs, and beliefs become behavior. Average thinking keeps you talking yourself out of opportunities before you even try. It convinces you that aiming high is risky, but staying small is somehow safe. Let me be clear, playing small is the biggest risk of all, because years pass whether you grow or not. At some point, you have to stop waiting for validation. Not everyone is going to clap for you when you decide to change. Some people liked you better when you were struggling because your growth makes them uncomfortable. But your life is not a group project. You don't need unanimous approval to become who God called you to be. You need courage. Letting go of excuses also means being honest with yourself, not cruel, honest. There's a difference. Honesty says, "I have work to do." Excuses say, "This is just how I am." You can't improve what you refuse to confront. When you stop lying to yourself, progress speeds up. You stop wasting energy defending habits that are holding you back. Average thinking avoids discipline and chases comfort. But comfort is expensive. It costs you time, potential, and grow, on the other hand, is painful at first but rewarding in the end. When you choose discipline, you're choosing your future over your feelings. That's maturity. That's growth. Some of you have been negotiating with your goals. You keep lowering them so you don't feel disappointed. But lowering your goals won't raise your confidence. Only effort does that. Confidence comes from keeping promises to yourself. Every time you show up when you don't feel like it, you build trust with yourself. That trust is powerful. Let me say this clearly, you don't need a miracle as much as you need momentum. Momentum comes from small, consistent actions done daily. Average thinking waits for big changes. Winners create small habits and let time do the heavy lifting. Stop underestimating what consistency can do. You don't have to be the best in the world. You just have to stop settling for less than your best. Growth starts the moment you decide that excuses are no longer acceptable. When you let them go, you make space for responsibility, discipline, and progress. This year doesn't need a different version of life. It needs a different version of you. And the moment you drop average thinking, your life rises to meet your decision. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that might not sound exciting, but it's the truth that separates winners from wishers. Motivation is overrated. Motivation is emotional. Motivation shows up when everything feels good and disappears the moment life gets hard. Discipline, on the other hand, is loyal. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. It shows up in the rain, in the dark, when nobody is clapping, and when the results are nowhere in sight. Too many people say, "I'm just not motivated right now." That's not the problem. The problem is you've been waiting on a feeling to do what requires a decision. Feelings are unreliable. They change with weather, sleep, money, and opinions. If success depended on motivation, nobody would make it. The people who win are the ones who decided ahead of time to do the work regardless of how they feel. Discipline is doing what needs to be done when you don't feel like it. It's waking up early when your bed feels better than your dream. It's practicing when nobody is watching. It's saying no to short-term pleasure so you can have long-term peace. Discipline is uncomfortable, but so is regret. The difference is discipline hurts for a moment while regret lasts for years. See, motivation will hype you up, but discipline will carry you through. Motivation says, discipline says, let's finish. Anybody can start something when they're inspired. Finishing is where character shows up. Finishing is where discipline earns its respect. A lot of people want the rewards of discipline without the routine of it. They want the body, but not the workout. They want the success, but not the sacrifice. They want the blessing, but not the burden. Discipline is the price you pay up front for the life you want later. And the bill always comes due. Let me be real with you, discipline is boring. It's repetitive. It's not glamorous. That's why so few people commit to it. You don't see fireworks every day. You see progress quietly stacking up. And most people quit right before discipline starts working. They stop because they don't see results fast enough. But discipline is like planting seeds. You don't dig them up every week to check if they're growing. You water them. You wait. You trust the process. Discipline also has no structure. If your life has no structure, your goals don't stand a chance. You can't leave your future to chance and expect consistency. Winners plan their days. They protect their mornings. They control their environment. They don't rely on willpower alone, because willpower runs out. Discipline builds systems so you don't have to think, you just execute. And let me say this because it matters. Discipline is not punishment. It's self-respect. When you keep promises to yourself, you send a message to your mind that you can be trusted. That builds confidence. Confidence doesn't come from compliments. It comes from consistency. Every disciplined action is a vote for the person you want to become. Some of you are tired, not because you're doing too much, but because you're doing too little of what matters. You're busy, but you're not disciplined. There's a difference. Discipline focuses your energy. It removes distractions. It forces you to choose what matters most, even when something else looks more fun. Understand this. Discipline will expose you before it elevates you. It will show you your weaknesses. It will confront your excuses. That's why people run from it. But on the other side of discipline is freedom. When you master yourself, life becomes easier to manage. You don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. That's another motivation trap. Discipline starts small. One habit, one decision, one commitment kept today, tomorrow, then again. Over time, those small disciplined actions turn into momentum, and momentum turns into results. Stop waiting to feel ready. Readiness comes after action, not before it. Discipline says, I'm starting now imperfect and unsure. And that decision, repeated daily, changes everything. If you want a different life, don't ask for more motivation. Build more discipline. Because when motivation disappears, and discipline will still be standing, holding the door open to the future you said you wanted. Ladies and gentlemen, let me speak to the part of you that's been hurt, disappointed, and confused by how life turned out. Because if we're being honest, most people don't quit because they're lazy. They quit because they're tired of being hurt. They tried. They believed. They stepped out, and it didn't work. So they pulled back, not because they lacked ability, but because pain taught them to be careful. But here's what you have to understand. Pain is not proof that you're doing something wrong. Sometimes pain is proof that you're growing. Nothing stretches without discomfort. Nothing transforms without pressure. The problem isn't that you've been through pain. The problem is when you let pain become your identity instead of your fuel. Everybody you admire has a story you don't see. Before the applause, there was embarrassment. Before the success, there was rejection. Before the confidence, there was doubt. The difference is they didn't let failure convince them to stop. They let it teach them how to move smarter, stronger, and wiser. Failure is not the opposite of success. Quitting is. Failure is feedback. It shows you what doesn't work. It exposes gaps in your preparation. It humbles you. And humility is a powerful teacher. If you're willing to listen, failure will give you instructions for your next level. Some of you are still bleeding from old wounds. You replay moments that didn't go your way and ask, why me? But at some point you have to stop asking why it happened and start asking what it taught you. Pain with purpose produces growth. Pain without reflection produces bitterness. And bitterness will keep you stuck longer than failure ever could. Let me tell you something important. Delay is not denial. Just because it didn't happen when you wanted doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Sometimes you were asking for something your character wasn't ready to handle yet. So life slowed you down. Not to punish you, but to prepare you. You've been through things that shaped you. They toughened you. They gave you empathy, wisdom, and depth. But if you're not careful, the same experiences that strengthened you can also make you guarded. Growth requires openness. You can't expect new outcomes with a closed heart and a defensive mindset. Using pain as fuel means you stop letting it make you small. You stop shrinking your dreams to avoid disappointment. You stop playing safe because safety feels familiar. Familiar doesn't mean fulfilled. It just means known. And there's a whole version of you that only shows up when you're willing to risk again. Some people stay stuck because they're waiting for confidence to come back. But confidence is built after action, not before it. You don't heal by hiding. You heal by moving forward with wisdom. You don't forget the pain, you use it. You let it sharpen your discernment, not silence your ambition. Understand this. Every setback carries a seed. If you have to plant it, if you hold on to it as resentment, it rots. If you bury it with effort, it grows. Life doesn't waste experiences. People do. When you extract the lesson, nothing is lost. And let me be clear, using pain as fuel does not mean becoming hard or angry. It means becoming focused, calm, unshakable. It means you don't overreact to obstacles anymore because you've been through worse. You stop panicking when things don't go your way because you know how much you can survive. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming. Every tear, every delay, every closed door added something to you. The problem is you've been looking at your past as proof that it won't work, when it's actually proof that you can endure. Stop letting yesterday disqualify tomorrow. The very thing that tried to stop you can become the thing that drives you if you let it. Pain didn't come to end you. It came to train you. And when you finally understand that, you stop asking life for an easier path and start asking yourself to become stronger. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring this home to where it really counts, your daily life. Big dreams sound good. Vision boards look nice. But dreams that are not connected to daily habits are just wishes. Everybody wants a breakthrough, but breakthroughs are built on routines. Your future is not created in one big moment. It's shaped in the small decisions you make every single day. Most people overestimate what they can do in 1 week and underestimate what they can do in 1 year. They try to change everything at once, get overwhelmed, and then quit. That's not growth, that's impatience. Real change is quiet. It's showing up when no one is watching. It's choosing progress over perfection. If your habits don't match your dreams, something has to change. And it's not the dream. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. What you repeatedly do becomes who you eventually are. That's why talent without discipline fades, and average people with strong habits pass them. Your mornings matter more than you think. How you start your day sets the tone for how you live your life. If you wake up rushed, distracted, and reactive, you're letting life control you. But when you wake up with intention, even for a few minutes, you take ownership. You don't need a perfect routine. You need a consistent one. Alignment is key. You can't say you want growth, but keep habits that support comfort. You can't pray for focus and then feed distraction all day. Every habit either votes for your future or against it. There is no neutral behavior. Even rest should be intentional, not an escape. A lot of people stay busy to avoid being disciplined. They fill their schedule so they don't have to face what really needs work. But business is not productivity. Discipline asks hard questions. What actually moves the needle? What deserves my best energy? What needs to be removed, not added? Let me tell you something powerful. Small habits compound. 1 extra hour a day spent learning, practicing, or improving doesn't feel like much. But over months and years, it separates lives. Success is often just doing small, boring things longer than other people are willing to. You also have to understand that habits shape identity. When you act disciplined, you start seeing yourself as disciplined. When you show up consistently, you begin to believe you are consistent. Identity follows behavior. Stop waiting to feel like the person you want to become. Act like them first. And listen closely, your environment matters. Willpower is not enough. If your surroundings don't support your goals, you're fighting uphill every day. Remove temptations. Create structure. Make good habits easy and bad habits hard. Discipline is not about being strong all the time. It's about being smart. There will be days when your habits feel pointless. Days when progress feels invisible. That's when most people quit. But those are the days when habits are working the most. Growth happens underground before it shows above ground. Trust the process you committed to. Don't look for motivation to maintain habits. Build habits so you don't need motivation. Once a habit is established, it carries you even on tired days. That's freedom. That's power. You'll need to change your whole life today. You need to change one habit and protect it. Then another. Over time, alignment turns into momentum, and momentum turns into results. The life you want is built quietly, daily, intentionally, by the habits you choose to keep even when no one is watching. Ladies and gentlemen, let me end this the way it needs to be said by talking about trust. Not the kind of trust that sits back and waits, but the kind that moves while believing. A lot of people say they trust God, but they also panic when things don't happen on their timeline. Real trust isn't calm because everything is going right. It's calm because you believe there's a bigger plan at work, even when you can't see it. You have to understand something about timing. Just because you're ready doesn't mean the moment is. And just because the moment hasn't come doesn't mean it won't. Some seasons are about preparation, not performance. In those seasons, nothing seems to be happening on the outside, but everything is being built on the inside. Patience is not passive, it's active faith. A lot of frustration comes from comparing your timeline to someone else's. You see people winning, celebrating, moving ahead, and you start questioning yourself. But you don't know what they carried to get there, and they don't know what you're being prepared for. Comparison steals peace and rushes decisions. What's meant for you doesn't require you to compete. It requires you to be ready. Trusting God also means trusting the process. The process is where character is formed. It's where discipline is tested. It's where humility is developed. Everybody wants the promise, but the process is what keeps you from losing it once you get it. If you skip the process, success becomes pressure instead of joy. Now, here's the balance. Trust does not mean inactivity. Faith without work is just talk. You pray, but you also plan. You believe, but you also build. You trust God to open doors, but you still have to knock. Waiting is not an excuse to be lazy. Waiting is preparation with expectation. Some of you are asking God for clarity when what you really need is commitment. Clarity often comes after the first step, not before it. If God showed you everything up front, fear would stop you. So sometimes He shows you just enough to move. Obedience unlocks understanding. Let me say this clearly. When you're doing the right things and it still feels slow, don't change direction. Change your patience. Growth doesn't always feel productive. Some days all you're doing is building endurance. And endurance is what keeps you steady when success finally shows up. Trust also means releasing control. That's hard for driven people. You want to manage every detail, but control creates anxiety and trust creates peace. Do your part, then let go of the outcome. You can't force timing. You can only prepare for it. And when doors close, don't assume it's rejection. Sometimes it's protection. Sometimes what you wanted would have cost you more than you realized. Looking back, you'll see moments you thought were losses that were actually redirections. God doesn't waste experiences. There will be moments when doubt tries to creep in, when silence feels loud, when prayers feel unanswered. That's when trust becomes a choice, not a feeling. You decide to showing up. You decide to keep working. You decide not to quit in the quiet season. You don't need to know how everything will work out. You just need to know what you're supposed to do next and do it well. Small obedience leads to big outcomes. Life rewards those who stay faithful to the work while trusting the timing. When preparation meets opportunity, favor follows. And when your moment comes, you'll realize the wait didn't weaken you. It prepared you. Keep moving. Keep believing. Keep working. And trust that what's meant for you is already on its way.